If you don't live and breathe the Olympics, it probably comes as a shock to hear that the Winter Games in Beijing are now less than 100 days away. That news might have caught you off guard, but the people behind Canada's most successful winter sport, speed skating, are all over it. This little podcast is set to burst its buttons today because count them, 3 legends of the sport are meeting me at the Calgary Olympic Oval. Chef de mission for the Canadian team, Catriona Le May Doan, assistant team coach Shannon Rempel, and multi-medalist and commentator Kristina Groves. What those 3 don't know about speed skating ain't worth knowing. Can we just admit that one thing is not like the others, and that's me? I don't feel like I have the right to be having this conversation with you, but I appreciate it. Chef de mission, all-time great. You birthed my Olympic dreams. Thank you for being here, Kristina. Katrina! Oh my God, I haven't even had wine yet.
My neighbor yesterday called me Katrina. If I hadn't told her for every time someone called me Kristina or Katrina, I'd be a millionaire.
We're gonna keep going.
This was the perfect intro.
That's why I've started saying Catriona. I say it in French, so now I say it in English.
I'm not even.
Very common. People screw it up all
I
the
know.
time.
Yeah.
Katrina, Claire, Christine, Christina. Yeah.
Too many.
That was the team.
We're just gonna get a new name for her.
Yeah. No, it's just Shannon and me. Lord, that was the perfect intro. I'm not even gonna redo that. Shannon Rempel, of course, coach now for Team Canada, one of my oldest and dearest friends and training partners. Yeah, you always say that. First question, let's just identify the elephant in the room. Oval broke down for a little over a year and the pandemic hit. How would you have dealt with that, Kristina?
Oh, as an athlete?
Yeah, as an athlete. That's like the hot topic.
You know, I said to Scott like a number of times throughout the last 2 years, I was like, I'm so glad I'm not skating anymore in this time period, because I think it would have been unbelievably hard. I think every time I've run into someone, any walk of life, everyone has run into some really hard time during this pandemic. And I think as an athlete, gosh, I think you just persevere. You figure out a way to make it work. You find the rinks, you find the imitations, you find whatever it is. And I mean, it would really be suck. It would suck though. I can't imagine having to experience that and have your whole Olympic dream derailed, you know, because you really just get the one chance. So that's hard.
So as a coach though, like, I mean, from your lens, what did that look like?
Yeah, we did find rinks. Lakes.
Outdoors.
Yeah,
exactly.
We were skating outside. Yeah, frozen water. We found it and we made it work. Coming into that role during the pandemic was tricky though, because then I didn't get to interact with the athletes very much, and you know, like that's a big part of like trusting your coach and like being a part of that. And I could tell they were having a hard time to not be able to train with each other either, because they were in separate pods all the time. But I am really proud of how they managed through that. Like I was also thankful I didn't have to do that. Like not really knowing what was going on all the time, which is uncertainty is, I mean, that's what life is, but it's extra hard when you're trying to prepare for an Olympics.
Mm-hmm. How would you have coped?
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm glad I wasn't an athlete.
We're all like,
yeah, exactly. It didn't stop my wine drinking time. But I was so inspired because the adaptability of everybody, but most of all athletes in all sports, was incredible. And so I think what's great is that they adapted and they still succeeded on the international scene. So it proved to them that sometimes whether you're superstitious, whether you like your routine, whatever that is, it can be changed and you can still do well. Fortunate for the winter athletes, they actually got to compete versus the summer athletes. And so even with the summer athletes in Tokyo, everybody saw how well they did, the Canadian athletes, without competition. So, you know, going into, I think it was the uncertainty of the games for the summer, at least for winter, they've known the games were not in question. They're not in question now, they weren't ever in question, they're happening. So they can still look at that finish line.
Being the chef, of course, for Beijing, 20 years since you won that second gold medal. I can't believe, we're all getting old, guys. How has it been leading the team?
Different, because when I dreamt of being chef, you'd be at every training camp, you'd be at every trials, and you'd be everywhere. But easier than Marnie, who's chef for Tokyo, because hers extended by a year.
Yeah.
And again, she couldn't do anything where, you know, I saw some of the races for World Cup trials. I'm hopefully going to go to some events. But it's the fact that, you know, I don't know what it's like through the pandemic being an athlete, but we've had to adapt and just trying to be a leader to the athletes. I know what it's like to be an athlete, to have the different experiences, to have the pressure. I know what it's like to be media. So if I can help them in any single way, then that's what I've always dreamt of doing. And, you know, you probably don't know this, but I don't have the Olympic ring tattoo, and I always said I will only get it if I'm ever chef de mission.
Really?
Yep. So I have 100 days to figure out. I have 2 spots, so that's been sort of when I explain the pinnacle for me. I've never allowed myself, unless I'm chef, then I'll get the Olympic rings.
Can you tell us which?
Yeah, that's not a secret. Well, it's either ankle, but I think it's actually like here. So then I'm a hand talker. So when I'm here, it faces people. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, "Oh, is that too showy?" And I said, "No, I believe in the values of the game. So to me, that's what I've lived and will always want to live." So I think that's where, because I have a couple other tattoos I have to work around and a couple other that I'm gonna get. So, but
Lovely.
Yeah.
I'm
no
the only
secret.
one, I guess. Jeesh. And I'm the only one that didn't do big things in the sport, so sorry. No, I know, that's what I'm saying. I do, though. No, I'm like a real
where's
ego.
yours?
It's on my foot. Yeah.
Okay.
Aside from adaptability, because that's an easy, you know, buzzword regarding COVID, what do you think is a benefit that'll come through the pandemic?
Oh, I think you can just roll with anything. You have to. You have to just be like, oh, the bus is late, whatever. Like, I feel like in my own personal experience, like as an athlete, I used to live, you know, you live day to day, but you have that distant vision. Mm-hmm. But like the last couple of years, I've literally just, it's abandoned. You live day to day and you just roll with what you can. You have to have the vision, the plan, but to not react in a way that takes away your energy, your sort of your poise, your focus, and just be like, okay, I got to take a test, fine. And I think, you know, I talked to Scott a lot about this stuff, and, you know, watching the athletes in Tokyo, one of his observations was the athletes who performed were the ones who didn't push back against any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And the ones that sort of maybe were a little more like, oh, it's not right, I can't do it, you know, that's where you run into sort of that resistance and not being able to just kind of roll with it. So I think that is probably the biggest skill or tool that the athletes might have gained from this experience, is just that it's the outcome of all the adapting they've had to do. Mm-hmm. Now they're just constantly adapting.
What does the road to Beijing look like right now?
It's, I mean, that was the first step, was trials, so people qualifying.
Yeah.
And now fingers crossed there's no more restrictions put into place, so we can kind of carry on with routines that we're used to. But it's competitions at World Cups. Hopefully those are still a go. Still some questions around that, but it's now fine-tuning everything and preparing.
Who surprised you, or what excited you from trials? And when we say trials, like, it's, you know, that was a big competition to essentially select the Olympic team, just for the folks that haven't seen it.
I don't know if I want to say surprises, because the beauty of sport is there's no guarantee. That's why we watch it. That's why we do it. If we knew what was going to happen, it'd be boring. Yeah. I think it's the fact that, you know, it's so competitive, and and this is what I don't miss, and yet what I do miss, is you have to be good at that moment. You can be great the day before, mm-hmm. and you can be great the hour before, and for 500, you look at 37 seconds. There's not room for a mistake. So who can put it all together? And it's the hardest thing to do, is to try. And, you know, you try to be perfect, it doesn't exist. And it took me a long time to come, after retirement, even to come to terms with, you don't have a perfect race, because it doesn't exist. So I think, to me, people don't necessarily surprise me. I think what I like seeing is they sometimes surprise themselves, because of what they're capable of doing under pressure and in those moments. And I think that's what's so great. And I love seeing that people can surprise themselves, because as much as we train, we still kind of go, are we good enough?
Oh, yeah. You can be tremendously insecure going into an Olympic year. I remember having that conversation with you prior to Vancouver. You had said, like, 6 months out to the Olympics, you kept thinking, oh my gosh, there's not enough time. And then we were like 3 days out before opening ceremonies. You're like, we have so much time. You're like, why are we even stressed? Oh yeah, it was a really significant conversation for me.
But like, I think self-doubt is awesome. I think it's like essential as an athlete. And that doesn't mean that you're not confident. I just think it means you're constantly trying to get better. It feeds the focus on what you need to do to get better. And so I wouldn't say I was like plagued by self-doubt, but I certainly be like, is this enough? Did I do it right? Mm-hmm. Is this the right thing? Am I on the right path? I need to fix this. And then, you get to the line, and if you're thinking that, you're kind of in trouble. You shouldn't be doing that then. But it for me, it was part of the process. And then you hit a wall, you hit a stumbling block. You're like, that wasn't right. I got to fix that. And I don't know. I always thought self-doubt was part and parcel. I thought it was a powerful emotion, and what's the word? Like, it was a way to refocus on those important things. If you got caught up in the outcome, or if you got caught up in the fanfare of stuff, all those little things come together. Self-doubt was one for me that kind of just, all that crap was melted away, and I was like, oh, this is about me and my journey and my process and what I need to do before I get there.
How do you communicate that to your athletes now?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want them to do is to believe in themselves, though, because I also lived like that, not always knowing if I was doing the right thing, but it's trusting that process and trusting that, like, every day you're putting that work in, and I want them to, like, be the best that they can be. So, yeah, I guess it's being patient with the challenges that you're experiencing. Like, there's failures every day at training, right? So just trusting that process, and then gaining that confidence from the training that they're doing, so that they can step on the line when they're ready and have no doubt when they're standing there.
I mean, I want to give you some love, though, because there's so much buzz and positivity that you're coaching the team now. And so many athletes, I connected with them to do little post-race interviews, and they all said, that was for Shannon. Oh, so no, it's true. And it's so exciting, because we need more female coaches. Like, we need, as a country, I hope that we, stop and listen and recognize that what you're doing for this team is tremendously beneficial. What are some of those lessons, like visceral lessons, that you try and implement and teach, though?
I mean, a big one, I know it sounds cheesy to say, but like enjoying it. Like enjoying that process every day. Like, training is hard.
It's hard.
So hard, and it's.
You love training, though. Like, I think we might be a little bit more similar.
No, I mean, I liked it. No, but there's like some joy and suffering together with your teammates, and I want them to like enjoy that part of it too. Yeah. It's like, it's hard, but you're doing this together with your teammates. You have this opportunity to race at World Cups, train on the national team, race Olympics, and like, that is cool. So I want them to enjoy that.
Even long road rides?
Oh, okay, well, that's
let's
out of line.
Those are the memories. When you think back to what you miss, you don't miss these sort of big competitions. You miss that time with your team, and that's the training camps. That's
a lot of time.
The heart-to-hearts on the bike, like when you've gotten your heart broken,
and knowing way too much stuff about each other.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what you miss.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest difference is skating now versus skating back in the day?
Well, the big thing, which is good and bad, is we used to leave town for 10 weeks. So tough, because nowadays everybody is, even the winter athletes, they're full-time in school more than we were able to. It's good and bad, because that time, my goodness, it was such fun. And it was 100% focus was skating. And so I think, unfortunately, when you don't have that, there's more time for distraction. And we need the distraction a little bit to enjoy, but the distraction can drain us. And I think that's tough. Different pressures too. I mean, social media is different now. So it's great because athletes can promote themselves, they can tell their story without necessarily having the media to have to do it. But then there's so much more pressure, and the people who are sort of don't have the courage can say whatever they want to the athletes, and that's not fun either. So there's the good and the bad to sort of my era and the era now.
What about you? What are your thoughts?
How far back are you going?
The good old days.
I went through, I'm sort of in between both of you because, like, I can think of a couple things. When I was first on the team traveling to Europe, like, I remember we brought a foam roller because we didn't have the resources to bring a physio and massage therapist. Like, we were a thin, like, it was tight, right? But we were, so then as we built into like Torino, Vancouver, like all of a sudden with Canadian Games, it was like, you've got it, right?
Yeah.
And the other change that I think too is, and this is maybe different for Catriona, but when I was first starting on the longer distance, we didn't have a legacy of excellence, of winning, right? It was like if you were in Group A or if you were top 20, it was like, that was great. And then Cindy came along, Clara came along, and we had Catriona and we had Susan who were winning on the sprints, and that was sort of like expected, but it was like okay that we weren't the best in the world. And then with Clara and CK came, I remember at a World Cup in Pinay, this was like Cindy's first year, she came like fourth in whatever race.
Yeah,
she crossed the line, she's like, was that good?
Yeah,
and I was like,
Cindy.
doing it for so long and you're not
Can someone sharpen
So
my
bad.
skates? Like, she didn't even know how to sharpen her skates. I mean, we shouldn't be poking fun. But.
No, we shouldn't, but she and
But we will.
They brought the culture of excellence to the women's distance team, and that was a huge shift in my thinking. When I saw that, I was like, oh, I could do that, you know. And then it shifted, and we ultimately became like a force, like for how many years?
Yeah.
Cindy, Clara, Brittany, Shannon, myself. Like
Nesbitt.
there was always Nesbitt, always a Canadian on the podium in the 15, 3K, 5K, like that sort of like. That shift happened in my career, where it started from like, 30 is okay, 30 is okay, to like, if you're not on the podium, it's a bad weekend.
Yeah.
So I think to now, the change is that legacy still exists, and I think there's probably, like you said, different pressures to kind of continue that legacy. Which is probably a lot harder, to be honest. I have to say, it's harder to keep those shoes filled than it is to fill them, because the pressure's on. There's people watching saying, well, 10 years ago, look what happened. What's happening now, right? Yeah. So that shift, for sure, I lived through, and I look now, and I think that would be probably the hardest part, is just to say, like, and to their credit, they've done it in a lot of ways, like Evanie, Isabel, the women's TP, Ted, I mean, Jordan,
Graham.
you know, they're all there, right? So it has been upheld, and I think it's harder to stay at the top than it is to get there. So,
What about you, Shannon? You are the most recently retired.
True. And I was fortunate when I started to race against Catriona and train with her a little bit.
How scary was that?
God. Well, I was still living in Winnipeg, so like I didn't know anyone, and that was there was no internet. We didn't bring laptops, so I was like just forced into this room with all these legends, and I don't think I spoke unless I was spoken to. Like I was just a fly on the wall trying to absorb everything. But that time we did sprint World Cups were separate from long distance World Cups, so the team was like kind of split. And then we'd have one World Cup at the end of the season, and it was everyone together. And then they started incorporating more and more. So for me, that had a big impact because then I had an opportunity to do more races. When I started training with Julie and Clara and Kristina in the long distance group, then I shifted kind of my focus into team pursuit, which was a lot longer than a 500,000, 6 laps, and had the opportunity to race 1500. So I think that really changed the distances too. More competitive people coming from 1500s and thousands, so it changed the 1,000 meter a little bit.
Changed a lot, actually. Putting those World Cups together changed a ton.
A lot, yeah.
You're right.
So that transition, I think it was really good for the sport because it allowed more crossover between long distance and sprint.
When was the last time you folks skated?
I think it was 2014. me and Cindy and Britt and like Phil Riopel and a couple of the other guys started coming at like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh dear.
For like just fun skates. It does sound a little absurd right now. It was 2014 because it was before I had kids. So it was 2014. And we did it for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks or something. And I literally had not even sharpened my skates since I retired and still have yet to have done that. And I skated like 5 or 6 times. And honestly, the thing that shocked me the most was like how completely normal and easy it felt. Like I could do 10 lappers and I was like, that was okay. It was insane. It felt so good. My body was so happy. I loved it. And I mean, that was 2014. That's like 7 years ago. I haven't done it since then. Now I go skate with my kids and I wear hockey skates and, you know, sometimes I rip around and do a few crossovers and I feel like a champ. But it's like that feeling in my body, I don't have to close my eyes and just feel it. And I'm like, it's like my body's happy place. And I probably should come and do it more often, but like I'm now 7 years since more removed from training and my body would probably revolt. Like, you know, I stay in shape like as much as I can, but that is a really specific position that requires like strength that I don't have anymore. But yeah, I mean, I don't miss those things, but I miss that feeling when it's just you, just this little moment of like that feel of the pressure in the ice and like, oh, it just felt so good. Yeah, I miss that.
What about you?
Mine was not 2014. Mine was like 3 years ago, and I was out quite a bit at club time. And again, for Excels, felt totally normal. But I've never...
You were Catriona Le May Doan was ripping Excels with like 10-year-olds.
There were more than 10-year-olds out at club time. But it was just so normal, and everybody's like, oh, it looks normal. I'm like, it feels normal. But then, because it has to be a specific time, and then the kids are so busy with sports, and then the plan was last year, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get, because I play old lady hockey and old lady ringette, so I'm on the ice a lot, and nobody beats me to the puck of the ring, but what I do after that.
How many pins? You a little dirty?
No, I'm not. I'm like, oh, sorry. 'Cause I don't come from team sport, right? And not even doing the TP or anything. And short track, that was my weakness, was like, oops. So, oh yeah, people in hockey are like, no, you have to get aggressive. I'm like, no. Like, you fall. I went to give somebody their stick, and my teammate's like, don't do that. You'll get a penalty. I'm like, oh, you can't give them your stick? Oh. No, so that's a no-no. So no, it's, you know what, I want to get back on the ice than last year with COVID, but then the oval, you know, kind of breaking down. Now it's great. Like, I was just watching the races. It's so nice, but I'm so analytical and so technical. I'm like, why aren't they on the hardtails? Because I'm like, they're pushing back. And, you know, I just get so specific that I'm like, okay, I better relax a little. So
Hardtails are the opposite of clap skates, just for
the old
folks.
Stuff.
Yeah, the old school, the OG.
Yeah.
What about you? I mean, you're on the ice all the time, but like, have you actually been in that godforsaken position?
I tried something last year when we were out in Red Deer skating, and I was like, oh, I feel pretty fast. And it feels the same. And I look the same, but I was going quite slow. Yeah. Quite slow. Yeah.
Oh,
like, that was so disappointing.
They were like 38s, but it felt like they were 32s.
Oh my gosh.
So awesome. Unforgiving. It's very unforgiving.
It's unforgiving.
Yeah.
But when you've done it for as long as we did, it's like riding a bike.
Totally is.
The feeling will never go away.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll be hopefully 80 someday and I can still feel that, or imagine I can feel that and get on my skates. I don't know. I remember,
We're going to go for a rep.
I'm going. Yeah, I'm going for at least one lap. At least one lap.
You got that. You got that.
Last question. Why do you think Canada has had so much success in long track speed skating?
Okay, so I think it started with the bricks and mortar in this building.
Yeah.
There was some before, like Gaetan, obviously. But whenever people ask me that question, I start with that, and I'm like, if this oval wasn't here, I don't think we would be sitting here right now. And I think what came of the bricks and mortar in this building was a culture and a group of people that built something inside this building. And that, I think, like, I came here in 95, that infrastructure was here in place. I moved here from Ontario. It was available. I came here and I could develop. I think that's actually the most amazing legacy out of 88 is that this facility didn't close down. It didn't turn into a rec facility. It didn't turn into a ghost town. It stayed as a high performance training center and a World Cup destination. I think the building, then the people, and then the athletes came. And I mean, such a cliche, but if you build it, they will come. And they all did. And I think that's why we're here.
What about you, Shan?
I would also give this building a lot of credit because I came from Winnipeg and there was no way I could have done another year outside in minus 40.
She's, fun fact, literally allergic to the cold.
Allergic to the cold, yeah.
And like from Winnipeg.
Yeah, frostbite, like my toes still go numb every day on the ice. So it was like a goal to come train here, you know, and be outside from out of the cold. But yeah, and the athletes. Like so many good athletes, and we had a lot of really good athletes from Winnipeg, and I was like, ooh, they get to go to Calgary and skate, like that was cool.
Yeah.
So having those athletes and a facility, I think, is for sure one of the biggest reasons we're successful.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the Oval for sure, because it wasn't just facility, but then, you know, the culture of the coaching, the ice, like everybody wanted to be the best. And so your word of culture, that's what I was thinking. And it's the fact that you look at the teams, and I look at when the sprinters were successful, we wanted to be good and we wanted to embrace greatness. I mean, if you look at 2002 when we had Casey Fitzrandolph training with us,
Yeah.
you know, and then people say, oh, but Jeremy falling and Casey winning, that was just one of those situations.
Yeah.
If the best in the world could help us, we would embrace that. And we would take it. And it was across the board. And I often compare it to Holland when they started sort of breaking apart into teams and having a lot of inner fighting. They didn't do well. And I think as soon as they've come back together as a country, they've done well, right? There have been the ups and downs, but us as a country and as a nation, we were willing to work together. And I think it's there again. And that breeds success, because those are the values of not just being independent. It's an individual sport, but there's a team. And so I think it started from the culture of this building, went into the sport. We have to buy into it, and we have. And that success, I mean, yes, there's ups and downs a little bit, but that's been part of it, is the whole culture and the teamwork. And that it is a team. I don't know anybody on any of our teams who's ever crossed the line is like, yeah, I did that. Nobody's ever thought that. Never.
How cool is it? And maybe it's cooler for me because I am a little bit younger. Just how many kick-ass women have done so well in this sport, though? Like, it's pretty cool. Like, and I need to thank you. I know I called you Kristina, duh, because I'm so starstruck right now. But like, truly, you, and I don't even know if you remember this, you skated with the Calgary club. I was 7 years old, and that's where my Olympic dreams were birthed. And I still have those photos, and I was so, like, just nervous. And I said, oh, you want to, race? We did a start. I beat you, by the way. I don't know if you remember that. Like, how cool is that? And how cool is it that you have people like Isabel Weideman and Evany Blondin and, oh my gosh, Kaylin Irvin, Heather McLean, all of these women that have put themselves in serious contention now. Val Malte, even coming from short track, they look to you and they say thank you.
That's a benefit of the Oval, is that you get to see those athletes every day. Like club level skaters get to see national team skaters train and interact.
That is
and
true.
I think that is super
the levels.
helpful.
Like when I remember I coached you.
Yeah. I was probably a
I
shithead.
was trying to make extra money when I first moved here, and I was like a coach for like little kids in the Calgary club. Like that level that you're exposed to in one location. And I remember, coming here, Oval program, but then the national team was always, you're exposed from age 5, 6, all the way up to world champion. That level is all here in one building, and that's rare.
Yeah.
I think that's really rare. You don't have an alpine ski team with the little kiddos on the ski hill, right? They have their own spot. Like, they don't necessarily interact in this, like, we're all housed under one roof. And I don't know, I can't think of actually another sport where you would see that, like, day in, day out. Maybe occasionally, like, you got a World Cup and there's cross-country skiers all like, there's little kids, but I can't imagine, like for 20 years, those were like little kids right up to world champion for that long. And so that goes into Katrina's comments about culture and just that excellence in this building.
And the fact that community kids then skate public on the same ice that this Olympic champion skated on, right? Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so great. Love it.
And Beijing 2022 is right around the corner. So hopefully that legacy is added to. I think with folks like you, you know, the team is in a good way right now.
Thank you.
It's exciting. Thank you. Like, how fun was this? I just genuinely wish we had a bottle of wine on the table, but maybe
Oh, I
next
have one
time.
in my purse.
Do it.
Welcome to my retirement.
Let's go skating.
My daughter drives now. It's all good.
Peace.